This is City TV, everywhere.
This is City News International. Here are your world news headlines for Monday, April 28th. House of Horror. An Austrian man confesses to keeping his daughter locked away for more than 2 decades and fathering her 7 children. Attack in Afghanistan. President Hamid Karzai escapes a Taliban assassination attempt. Raging wildfires.
This is an early fire season. The fuel load is heavy.
California's fire season gets off to a blazing start. Good evening. I'm Gord Martineau. The lead tonight. Austria is in shock over the unbelievable case of a man who imprisoned and sexually abused his daughter for almost a quarter century. The 73-year-old has also confessed to fathering 7 children with her. For 24 years, Josef Fritzl kept his daughter captive in the basement of this house in an Austrian town. It's called Amstetten. Austrian media have dubbed it the House of Horrors. It all began in 1984, when Fritzl allegedly lured his daughter, Elizabeth, then aged 18, into the basement. He then drugged and handcuffed her before locking her up. She was made to write a letter, which made it seem as though she ran away. Fritzl kept her in the basement and told investigators he fathered 7 children by Elizabeth. One of them died shortly after it was born. He reportedly disposed of its body in an incinerator. 3 of the children were brought up by Fritzl and his wife, Rosemary. She was told the children were left on the doorstep. Apparently had no idea her daughter was imprisoned in the basement. The remaining 3 children remained with Elizabeth in the basement, never seeing sunlight or receiving an education. Investigators released these pictures of the basement. They show a narrow passageway leading into other rooms, which included a cooking area, sleeping area, and a small bathroom with a shower. A tube provided ventilation. Investigators say the truth came out when the oldest child, aged 19, was left at a hospital with a life-threatening illness. Police appealed for her mother to come forward. That's when Fritzl brought Elizabeth and her children out of the basement. She reportedly made a statement to police after being assured she would have no contact with her father ever again. Questions are now being asked about how Fritzl was able to maintain a double life without anyone noticing. The story has provoked national soul-searching in Austria, and it's brought back memories of what happened to Natascha Kampusch, another Austrian girl who was kidnapped at age 10 and made a secret captive for almost a decade. The Taliban is taking responsibility for a brazen assassination attempt against Afghanistan's president that forced a Canadian diplomat to take cover in Kabul. Foreign diplomats and dignitaries scrambled for cover yesterday as automatic gunfire and grenades rained down on the nation's biggest annual military celebration. President Hamid Karzai had just arrived when the militants attacked, sending security forces scurrying for safety. 3 people were killed in the attack, ruining what was supposed to have been a proud moment for Afghan security forces. President Karzai managed to escape the close-range barrage of bullets, but authorities are now probing how militants got within 500 meters of the country's top leaders. This parliamentarian says there is no security force in Afghanistan that people trust. If you pay attention to yesterday's incident, the security force fled from the site before the ordinary people did. Shortly after the attack, a relaxed and smiling Karzai appeared on state television to reassure the public. Fortunately, Afghanistan's military forces surrounded the enemies, arrested some suspects, and the situation was under control. Be confident. Canadian Ambassador Arif Lalani was not hurt. Canada has strongly condemned the attack, but says it will not deter support for the Afghan people, Karzai, or his government. Human error is being blamed for a deadly train crash in China. Dozens of people are dead after a high-speed passenger train jumped its tracks and slammed into another train in the country's eastern zone.
At least 70 people were killed in China's worst rail crash for more than a decade. Soldiers removed bodies from the wrecked trains as hospital officials warned the death toll was expected to rise. The accident happened near the city of Shibo in eastern China. One train was en route from the capital Beijing to the seaside resort of Qingdao when it derailed at a bend, colliding with a train traveling from Yantai in Shandong province. China's official Xinhua news agency said authorities had determined the crash was caused by human error. 400 people were taken to hospital, many with serious injuries. One of China's top sailing coaches lost both legs in the accident. He was on his way to Qingdao, the summer resort where this year's Olympic sailing events are to be staged. 4 French nationals were also among the injured. The rail line was due to be retired for all but freight traffic as work on a new high-speed link nears completion in time for the Olympics. The crash is the second major rail accident this year. In January, 18 people died when a high-speed train ran through a group of maintenance workers. State media is reporting that the regional director of the railways is being investigated following his sacking earlier on Monday. Helen Long, Reuters.
North Korea has given the Olympic torch the kind of welcome host nation China was hoping for. The torch relay was full of pomp and circumstance and free of any anti-China protests. Not a single demonstrator could be seen as hundreds gathered in Pyongyang to greet the Olympic torch. North Korean officials, eager to please their only real ally, China, promised an impeccable celebration, and they delivered. Tens of thousands lined Pyongyang streets, waved North Korean and Chinese flags, and cheered the torch. North Korea is one of the world's most repressive regimes where dissent is punishable by imprisonment or death. It was a very different story when the torch passed through the South Korean capital of Seoul. Demonstrators protesting China's forced repatriation of North Korean refugees clashed with pro-China groups. The U.S. ambassador to South Korea says recent allegations North Korea helped Syria with nuclear technology will not add more pressure to the six-party talks over Pyongyang's nuclear program.
It has already become a complicating factor for the six-party talks. The fact that we have briefed the Congress and the public on this it doesn't add to the gravity of the situation.
Last week, the United States released photographs linking Pyongyang to a reactor under construction in Syria. It was seen as an attempt to push North Korea to come clean about exporting its nuclear know-how. Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was in Pakistan today for an official visit. He met with President Pervez Musharraf and new Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani. The Iranian leader is hoping to sign off on a $7.6 billion gas pipeline deal. The pipeline would run more than 2,000 kilometers from Iran to India through Pakistan and would carry an initial 60 million cubic meters of gas a day. Ahmadinejad is now in Sri Lanka, where he's expected to sign deals improving the island nation's energy supplies. Blazing wildfires have forced more than 1,000 people from their homes in Southern California. Fire crews have been battling the flames in the hills northeast of Los Angeles since Saturday. High winds unexpectedly kicked up this morning, sending flames within yards of several homes in the city of Sierra Madre. Residents there had already been asked to leave.
That it was time to evacuate. It was coming over the hill, and we looked out the window, and sure enough, you could see the glow and see some of the ashes coming down.
It could be a week before the flames are fully contained. Police dogs in Mexico are being trained to find a new kind of contraband, pirated DVDs. Lucky and Flo 2 female black labs have been specially trained by the U.S. Motion Picture Association to detect the plastics and solvents used to make optical discs. Mexico has the dubious honor of being the world's #4 exporter of pirated DVDs and CDs. American film studios estimate they lost $483 million of revenue in Mexico last year. Thousands of rockets lit up the night sky in Greece as part of an Orthodox Easter tradition. Each year, parishioners of 2 rival churches fire handmade rockets at each other in the hopes of hitting the bell tower. The flaming projectiles rain down as Easter Mass takes place inside. No one has been hurt in the rocket wars in recent years, but the event keeps the fire department busy. The tradition dates back to the 19th century and is sieged by the Ottoman Empire. A small plane crashed into a crowd at an East German air show this weekend, killing a female spectator and hurting 14 others. Rescue crews rushed to the scene northeast of Frankfurt after a propeller plane went off the runway and crashed into a nearby stall. A helicopter airlifted the injured to hospital. Berlin's historic Tempelhof Airport is doomed to closure after a referendum to keep it open failed to draw enough support. 60% of the votes were in favor of saving the 1923 icon, but not enough people turned out for the vote to count. The city plans to close the airport in October to make way for a large central airport southeast of Berlin. In Gaza, a mother and her 4 children were killed when an Israeli missile smashed through their home. In the town of Beit Hanun, hundreds marched in the funerals for the mother and 4 children. Mourners carried the bodies of the children aged between 1 and 5 years in their arms. They died when an Israeli shell burst through their home as they ate breakfast. At least 2 other people were killed in the same explosion. Shortly afterwards, Hamas's armed wing fired rockets on the southern Israeli town of Sderot. The group said it fired 3 rockets in response to the Beit Hanun killings. Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak said the military was targeting Palestinian rocket crews. He said the families' deaths were Hamas's fault for carrying out their activities in the midst of a civilian population. In the West Bank, Israeli soldiers opened a checkpoint blocking the city of Nablus from dozens of smaller towns and villages in the northern West Bank. Palestinians who called the checkpoint as a major bottleneck for travelers and traders cheered as the yellow metal gate swung open to allow cars to pass unimpeded for the first time in 5 years. The checkpoint was opened after Middle East envoy Tony Blair presented Israel with a list of West Bank travel and trade restrictions he wants lifted to boost peace talks with the Palestinians. Coming up on Citynews International, office hijinks. Germans take to the streets in the first annual office chair race. Hundreds of people in Merritt, British Columbia took the time to say goodbye to 3 young children over the weekend. A memorial service was held for Caitlin, Max, and Corden Schoenborn, found murdered in their home earlier this month. Residents of Merritt packed the Civic Center to pay their last respects to 3 young children who were murdered earlier this month.
We are here to honor and remember 3 little angels, Caitlin, Max, and Corden.
Saturday's service was held 3 weeks to the hour that the children's mother found their bodies in their mobile home. The children's father, Alan Schoenborn, has been charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. A report from the Bank of Nova Scotia indicates higher food prices are on the way across the country. A United Nations report found that global food prices have increased 57% from last year, while the price of rice has doubled. Canadians have so far been spared price hikes at the grocery stores. The strong value of the Canadian dollar has cushioned most price hikes as agricultural commodities like grain, fuel, and fertilizer are priced in U.S. dollars. Increased prices for food could come as early as this summer. London's curry houses are a popular fixture of the city's culinary landscape. But the skyrocketing price of food, especially rice, is putting their future in peril.
As food costs spiral and the price of rice soars to lifetime highs, Azmal Hussain in East London is getting ready to close one of his restaurants.
Because I have to survive. I have to pay my bills. Nobody will pay my bill. If I continue like this, I cannot pay my staff, I cannot pay my bill, so then what happened? I have to go from here, and that I don't want.
Hussain will soon decide whether to close Jeet, the least busy of his 4 restaurants in London's Brick Lane, famous for its piping hot curries. The business is being squeezed as Asia's big suppliers of rice put priority on feeding their own populations. 3 months ago, a 20-kilo bag of wholesale basmati rice cost the equivalent of $29. That same bag is now $49, a whopping 66% price rise.
But now, credit crunch and the food crunch make profit margin is less, so people cannot offer.
Rice is just one staple that's more expensive. Cooking oil costs 10% more than it did 3 months ago. Hussain says he has no choice but to raise menu prices, the first time since he opened back in 1999 to London's curry-obsessed masses. Alex Waugh of Britain's Rice Millers Group said this year's harvest is key to where rice prices go.
In my opinion, and in the view of most in the grain trade, we're not going to see prices collapse back to the level they were. What we're seeing is a real increase, and that's because of rising demand around the world, just because of population. We have 80 million new mouths to feed every year, which is the equivalent of, say, Germany. A new Germany every year.
Back in Brick Lane, Hussain is still hopeful and is looking to the thousands that will come to London for the 2012 Olympics to boost business in the future. He even has plans for a McDonald's-style Indian fast food joint. The Happy Meal, though, is likely to be close to $12. Siddhartha Dubey, Reuters, London.
Coming up on City News International, it's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's a race car. The cars were flying at the Le Mans series in Italy. Thousands of turtle hatchlings made the brave race from shell to shore in India this weekend in a mad dash to their ocean home. As the sun rose over the sandy shores of eastern India, over 150,000 endangered olive ridley turtles emerged from their shells for one of the most dangerous days of their lives. Hatching is the most crucial time for the tiny creatures, as many risk suffocating in their sandy dens.
In some years you get rain during the time of hatching, which compacts the nest and the babies are not able to come out.
Once escaping the nest, the helpless creatures risk being eaten by predators or crawling in the wrong direction.
I just saw a few turtles emerging, and the children are doing some very good work collecting the turtles. Initially there was no net to stop the turtles from going outside and getting lost. So this is a very good thing they've done to keep the turtles safe.
Life doesn't get any easier once they reach the surf. Researchers say only one of about every 1,000 hatchlings ever reaches adulthood. Your world can change in an instant. Breaking international news is only a click away. Citynews.ca.